a billionaire who had everything: power, wealth, respect. But when his only son was born blind, his world shattered. For years, doctors declared there was no hope, until a humble housemaid made a discovery that would shock everyone. What happened next will leave you speechless. Richard Montgomery was a name whispered with across boardrooms and banquets. He was the man who could close billion-dollar deals before breakfast, the man who owned skyscrapers that pierced the clouds, and the man other billionaires secretly envied. But wealth, as Richard knew all too well, could not shield him from life's cruelest blows. His only son, Daniel, was born blind. The announcement spread through the elite like wildfire. It wasn't just sad news, it became gossip, fuel for mockery. Behind closed doors, the whispers stung like daggers. The mighty Richard Montgomery, the man who conquers empires but couldn't even give his son the gift of sight. At lavish banquets, rivals smirked behind crystal glasses of champagne. One particularly venomous competitor sneered, "Perhaps this is a cursed punishment for sins the great Montgomery hides behind his empire." Richard pretended not to hear, but the words carved deep scars into his pride. Daniel's blindness wasn't just a condition, it became a sentence Richard fought desperately against. He spent millions flying his boy across continents, begging the world's best specialists for miracles. Each trip ended with the same cold conclusion: your son will never see. Accept it. But Richard refused to accept anything. The mansion echoed with tutors, machines, and therapists. Yet for all the noise, Daniel's world remained wrapped in silence and darkness. Staff members walked on eggshells around him, their pity almost louder than words. They guided him too gently, spoke to him too softly, treating him like fragile glass. And perhaps worst of all, Richard, his father, retreated. The man who wrestled corporations into submission could not bear to sit across from his son's clouded eyes, so he drowned himself in work, building higher towers, chasing larger deals, anything to escape the reminder of his failure at home. But Daniel himself was different. At just 10 years old, he had a heart far stronger than anyone realized. While others saw darkness, he clung to curiosity. He would sit in the garden for hours, listening to birdsong, laughing at the rustle of leaves, asking the staff to describe the changing colors of the sunset. His laughter was soft, but it lit up the cold halls of the mansion, though few ever noticed, because in truth, Daniel was lonely. Surrounded by marble floors, chandeliers, and silence, he lived in a golden cage. And then Maria arrived. She wasn't from wealth, nor from privilege. She was a young housemaid, humble, hardworking, carrying an energy that stood out in the lifeless mansion. Where others saw a boy to be pitied, Maria saw a boy to be loved. She read stories aloud to him with dramatic flair, turning bedtime into adventure. She invented sound-based games that made him giggle uncontrollably. She encouraged him to try tasks on his own, pouring juice, walking with confidence, even daring to run in the garden. Daniel laughed again. For the first time in years, the halls of the Montgomery mansion echoed with joy. But then one quiet morning changed everything. As sunlight streamed through the curtains, Maria noticed something strange. Daniel's head turned slightly, following the glow. Her heart skipped. Could it be a coincidence? She tested it, waving her hand gently across his face. His eyes shifted. They were tracking her movement. Maria froze. No, it couldn't be. The doctors had declared him blind. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Daniel, can you see anything?" Daniel hesitated. Then, with shame in his voice, he admitted, "Sometimes, shadows, shapes, colors. But I didn't tell anyone. The doctors said I was blind. I didn't want Dad to be disappointed again." Maria's hands shook. It wasn't a miracle, it was a truth long overlooked. Daniel wasn't completely blind. His condition had been misunderstood all along. And with that discovery, everything was about to change. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to read it. Maria's heart raced after Daniel's confession. She couldn't keep this to herself, but telling Richard Montgomery, the man who trusted only science, was terrifying. That evening, she gathered her courage. As Richard returned home from another exhausting day, briefcase in hand and tension etched into his face, Maria approached him. "Sir," she began carefully, "there's something I must show you." "About Daniel?" Richard's brows furrowed instantly. He hated when staff brought him false hope. His voice snapped like a whip. "Don't play games with me, Maria. I've heard every miracle claim under the sun." But Maria persisted. She gently led Daniel into the sitting room, where golden lamplight spilled across the carpet. She placed a red apple on the table and whispered to the boy, "Daniel, what's in front of you?" Daniel bit his lip, then slowly turned toward the apple. "It's round and red, like the one you gave me yesterday." Richard froze. "Daniel," Maria pressed, "can you tell what your father is wearing today?" Daniel's eyes, though cloudy, shifted toward Richard. His voice trembled. "Dad, you're wearing a blue tie." The silence that followed was deafening. For a man who had built his life on control, Richard suddenly felt his knees weaken. He collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Ears of bottled pain cracked open. "Do you have any idea?" His voice broke. "How many times I prayed for this moment." Still, Richard's mind wrestled with disbelief. Could this truly be real? Or was it coincidence? Was Maria giving his son cues? Maria met his doubts with steady conviction. "Sir, I don't expect you to trust me, but please watch for yourself. Daniel can see more than the doctors ever believed. We can't ignore this." For the first time, Richard's guarded eyes softened. He didn't trust easily, but something in Maria's unwavering sincerity pierced his armor. That night, Richard did something he hadn't done in years. He sat beside his son's bed. Daniel, already drifting towards sleep, turned his head curiously. "Dad, is that you?" Richard swallowed hard. "Yes. Son, I wanted to tell you good night." Daniel's lips curved into a small smile. "It's been a long time since you said that." Richard blinked back tears. He had been absent for too long, afraid of hurting, afraid of failing. But in that moment, he realized that Daniel didn't need perfection. He just needed his father. "Good night, Daniel," Richard whispered, pressing his trembling hand over his son's. "Tomorrow, we'll start again, together." It was a small gesture, but to Daniel, it was everything. The next day, Richard canceled meetings, an unthinkable move for a man like him. He asked Maria to show him more. They sat in the library with objects of different colors: a yellow book, a green vase, a blue cushion. Each time, Daniel surprised his father by naming or describing them with remarkable accuracy. Richard's heart lifted, but fear lingered. What if it's just luck? What if we're wrong? Maria shook her head gently. "Sir, this isn't luck. Your son has been hiding his truth because he didn't want to disappoint you. He's braver than you know," and Richard saw it clearly. Maria had given Daniel something no doctor had: confidence. That evening, as the three of them shared dinner, Richard asked Maria quietly, "Why do you care so much? You could just do your job and walk away." Maria smiled faintly. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible. When I was a child, my family had nothing. People looked right through us. But one teacher believed in me, and it changed my life. Daniel reminds me of myself. No child should grow up believing they are broken." Her words struck Richard to the core. For years, he had poured money into solutions, but never love. This maid, with her humble beginnings, had given his son what his billions could not: hope. Over the following weeks, the mansion slowly shifted. Daniel no longer sat silently in corners. He laughed. He tried. He asked questions. Maria's presence filled the home with warmth, and for the first time in a decade, Richard found himself staying in for family dinners rather than escaping to endless work. But outside the mansion, the world was not as kind. Rumors still swirled, rivals still mocked, and Richard knew that stepping forward with Daniel's potential recovery could draw even more scrutiny. The bond was growing, but so were the stakes. What would you do if you discovered someone with incredible potential that the world had overlooked? Would you fight for them, even if it meant being doubted or mocked? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. The days that followed felt almost magical inside the Montgomery mansion. Daniel blossomed. He began exploring places he once feared: the rose garden, the music room, even the grand dining hall where he once felt so small beneath crystal chandeliers. Maria's voice became his compass, guiding him with gentle confidence. And Richard, once too afraid to hope, now found himself at Daniel's side more often than in his boardroom. One afternoon, Daniel asked to play the piano in the music room. His fingers stumbled at first, but Maria clapped with delight. "Listen to that, Daniel. You made the room sing." Richard, watching from the doorway, felt a pang of pride mixed with guilt. How many moments like this had I missed? Daniel turned toward the sound of his father's quiet breath. "Dad, are you proud of me?" Richard's throat tightened. "More than you know, son. More than you know." For the first time in years, father and son shared not just space but heart. Yet while the mansion's walls echoed with new life, the outside world remained harsh. Word began to spread. Guests noticed Daniel's changes during charity events. Some whispered in awe, "Could it be? Is Montgomery's son really seeing?" But others scoffed. At a board meeting, one rival sneered, "Careful, Richard. Don't let that maid fill your head with fairy tales. You'll make a fool of yourself again." Laughter followed, sharp and cruel. Richard clenched his fists beneath the polished table. Every insult felt heavier now, not because of his pride, but because of Daniel. The boy deserved belief, not mockery. The more Daniel practiced with Maria, the braver he became. He no longer hid his secret. He confessed to Richard in the garden one evening. I always saw, just a little, shadows, shapes, bits of color, but I thought if I told you, and it wasn't real, you'd stop believing in me altogether. Richard knelt, pulling his son close. Daniel, you never have to hide from me again. I should have been here all along, not just throwing money at doctors, but standing beside you. Maria watched quietly, her heart swelling. The mansion was no longer cold, it was beginning to feel like a home. But just as hope grew brighter, reality slammed back in. When Richard contacted specialists to reassess Daniel, he faced skepticism. Doctors reviewed old charts and shook their heads. It's impossible. Our diagnosis was final. Perhaps this maid is giving him cues. Don't let false hope ruin your family. Richard's temper flared. Are you telling me that my own son's eyes deceived me? That what I witnessed was a trick? But behind the medical words lay something uglier, professional pride. Admitting they were wrong meant admitting years of failure. Maria, however, refused to yield. Sir, don't stop now. Daniel needs you to fight not against the world, but for the truth. Despite her courage, cracks appeared. Richard sat in his study late into the night, staring at Daniel's childhood photos. Could he really put his son through endless tests again? Could he bear the humiliation if the world mocked him once more? And Daniel himself began to fear. One evening he whispered to Maria, "What if Dad believes again and it doesn't work? What if I disappoint him like before?" Maria squeezed his hand firmly. "You are not a disappointment, whether you see or not. Your worth isn't measured by anyone's opinion, not even your father's." Her words settled deep in Daniel's heart. For the first time, he felt not just hope but dignity. The breaking point came when a high society acquaintance cornered Richard at a gala. "Montgomery," the man sneered, swirling champagne. "Don't tell me you're letting a maid dictate your son's fate. You've become a joke among us." Richard's jaw tightened. Once, he might have stormed away, but this time, he lifted his chin. "If believing in my son makes me a joke," he said evenly, "then laugh all you want, because I'd rather be mocked for hope than respected for despair." The words surprised even him. For the first time, Richard felt a strength born not from power or wealth but from love. Have you ever faced obstacles when trying to help someone you cared about? What challenges did you face, and how did you push through? Share your experience, I'd love to hear it. Richard was no longer the same man who once hid behind boardroom walls. He refused to let doubt choke his son's future, against the dismissive doctors, against the cruel laughter of rivals. He searched again, this time not for fame, but for answers. Specialists from abroad were summoned, not because they were expensive, but because they were willing to listen. The tests began anew. Machines whirred, charts filled with fresh notes, and slowly, the truth unfolded. Daniel wasn't blind in the absolute sense. He had a rare condition, complex, but treatable. With the right surgery, his vision could be restored. Richard's chest swelled with a mix of fury and gratitude. Fury that years of opportunity had been lost. Gratitude that hope had not died after all. Maria's face shone with tears. "I told you," she whispered, gripping Richard's arm. "He wasn't broken. He just needed someone to believe in him." While the surgeons prepared, Daniel grew bolder each day. Maria encouraged him to practice recognizing colors, objects, even faces. One afternoon, he traced Richard's face with his fingers, then leaned back with a grin. "You've got lines here now." "Dad, are those wrinkles?" Richard laughed through tears. "Yes, son, they're from worrying about you." Daniel giggled. "Then when I can see, I'll tell you not to worry so much." That moment was more healing than any medical report. For the first time, Daniel wasn't afraid of his difference, he owned it, and he was ready to fight for his future. The day arrived. The operating room lights glared, the air heavy with nerves. Richard sat outside, pacing like a man awaiting judgment. Maria sat close by, whispering prayers, clutching the rosary she carried since childhood. Hours passed like centuries. Finally, the door swung open. The surgeon's eyes were tired, but smiling. "It went well," he said softly. "Now we wait for recovery." Days later, the moment of truth arrived. Bandages were gently unwound, light seeping through layer by layer. "Daniel," the doctor murmured, "try to open your eyes slowly." The boy blinked, once, twice. His lips parted in wonder. I see something," he gasped. "It's bright and blurry, but I see." Richard gripped his son's hand, trembling. "What do you see, Daniel? Tell me." Daniel's gaze steadied, shaky but real. He pointed at his father. You're smiling. I can see your smile." The room erupted in sobs. Richard, once mocked as cursed, held his son in shaking arms. He didn't care who knew. The world's richest man was weeping, not over money, but over the miracle of sight. Maria wiped her tears, whispering to herself, "This is what kindness was meant for." Weeks later, the mansion became a place of joy, no longer silent. It buzzed with laughter. Daniel walked through the gardens, marveling at roses he had only smelled before. He played piano with confidence, now able to see the keys dotted at a family gathering. He raised a toast with orange juice in hand. "To Maria, the one who saw me before anyone else did." Guests clapped, some humbled, others ashamed of their past whispers. For the first time, Richard didn't care about their judgment. His pride wasn't in skyscrapers or wealth, it was in his son's courage and in the maid's unwavering faith. Months later, Richard took Daniel to a charity gala, but this time, it wasn't about appearances. On stage, Daniel stood tall, holding Maria's hand. "I was once called cursed," he told the crowd, "but all I needed was kindness. Because of Maria, I can see today, and I promise to spend my life helping other children like me." The audience erupted, cameras flashed, and for once, Richard didn't feel mocked. He felt humbled by his son's heart, and by the woman who had changed everything. From then on, Richard's wealth built more than towers. It built hope, funding foundations, surgeries, and research for children once left in the dark. And it all began with a maid who refused to give up. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments. Months after Daniel's surgery, life inside the Montgomery estate had transformed completely. Richard, once known only as a ruthless billionaire, was now remembered for something greater, a father who refused to stop fighting for his son. His name filled headlines again, but this time, not for another business empire. The world now spoke of the Montgomery Foundation for Children's Vision, a program funding treatment and education for thousands of disadvantaged kids around the world. Daniel flourished. With each passing day, his vision sharpened, and so did his spirit. He returned to the piano with passion, filling the halls of the mansion with music that told his story without words. At school, he inspired other children to believe that limitations were only beginnings, and Maria, she remained by his side, not just as a maid, but as family. Richard could never repay her for the courage she showed, but he made sure her life changed, too. She became the director of the Montgomery Foundation's outreach programs, touching countless lives with the same warmth she once gave Daniel. The boy who was pitied, the man who was mocked, and the maid who was underestimated, all of them had rewritten the story together. This isn't just a tale about a boy regaining sight. It's about something deeper, the way one person's kindness can break through walls of despair, arrogance, and doubt. We live in a world quick to judge, quick to dismiss, and quick to give up. But Maria's courage reminds us, when you choose compassion, you don't just change one life, you change every life touched by the ripple. And Daniel's story is proof that even in the darkest places, hope waits for someone brave enough to believe. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover inspiring stories like Daniel's. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that restore faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and remember, you have the power to change someone's entire world.